Gather around scholars and curious minds, for today we delve into the storied history of one of the most secretive and revered Space Marine chapters of the Imperium, the Dark Angels. In the dim, sanctified halls of the library Sanctus on Holy Terra, where the echoes of the past resonate, we uncover the tale of the First Legion. Born from the gene seed of their primarch, Lionel Johnson, their origins are as shrouded in mystery as their current pursuits. The Dark Angels were forged during the dawn of the Imperium in the crucible of the Emperor's Great Crusade. They were the first, the template upon which subsequent legions were based. Under the stoic and tactical brilliance of Lionel Johnson, they carved a path of compliance across the stars, bringing worlds into the Emperor's fold. But theirs is a tale that veers into the shadows. The Horus Heresy tore the galaxy and cast a dark pall over the Dark Angels. During these tumultuous times, a fracture emerged within the Legion, a schism that would forever alter their destiny. In the aftermath, the Legion was split, its remnants reorganized during the Second Founding into what we now know as the Dark Angels chapter, along with their successor chapters, collectively known as the Unforgiven. Their fortress monastery, the Rock, a fragment of their lost homeworld of Caliban, serves as a bastion of strength and a monument to their penitence. You see, the Dark Angels harbor a secret, a stain upon their honor that they tirelessly seek to expunge. They hunt relentlessly for the fallen, those brethren who succumbed to betrayal during the Horus Heresy. This quest, this unending pursuit of redemption, defines them. It is a mission carried out in the deepest secrecy, for the truth of their shame could very well shatter their standing within the Imperium. As we explore the depths of their lore, remember that the Dark Angels are not just warriors. They are penitents, forever seeking to atone for a sin not of their making, but borne by them all. Theirs is a path of secrecy and sorrow, valor and vigilance, a never-ending crusade against the shadows of their past. When Terra was mired in the throes of Old Night, a planet fractured into countless warring techno-barbarian states, a time when humanity teetered on the brink of extinction. In this tumult of chaos and war, the Emperor of mankind emerged, with a grand vision to unite Terra under his rule and launch humanity into a new age of glory. Key to this vision were his genetically engineered warriors, the Astartes, and at the forefront of these were the Dark Angels, the first, the 6 hosts of the Angels of Death, the Emperor's finest, the vanguard, the first blade unsheathed. The early recruits of the Dark Angels were drawn from the most genetically pure and uncorrupted inhabitants of Terra, a scarce resource amid the planet's atomic wars and genetic plagues. These warriors were a disparate group, coming from every corner of Terra, each bringing with them their own cultural legacies and martial traditions. They were the dregs of society, the forgotten, the outcasts, and the Emperor molded them into a singular force of unparalleled might. The gene seed of the Dark Angels was the first to be stabilized, and these early warriors were the prototypes for all Space Marines to come. These warriors cast aside their former identities, embracing a new brotherhood under the Emperor's banner. They adopted new names drawn from the ancient tales of Terra's history, names like Gilgamesh, Heracles, Tarshon, and Hengist, echoing the heroic epics of a bygone era. As the first Space Marine Legion, the Dark Angels were the testbed for the Emperor's grand experiment. They fought as small units within the Emperor's vast armies, quickly earning a reputation as the uncrowned princes of the battlefield. Their combat doctrine, strategies, and way of war would lay the foundations for the Principia Bellicosa, the great work that would guide all Astartes in the battles to come. In the Unification Wars, the Dark Angels were the Emperor's left hand, the instrument of annihilation against those who opposed his vision. They fought in battles that are now the stuff of legend. Their victories were decisive, but they were also brutal. leaving no room for mercy or doubt. They were not conquerors, they were exterminators, and they carried out their grim duty with cold and ruthless efficiency. The Angels of Death, indeed. As the Unification Wars drew to a close, Terra stood unified under the Emperor's banner, and the gaze of the Imperium turned starward. The Great Crusade was a monumental endeavor, an unprecedented campaign of liberation and conquest that spanned the galaxy. At its vanguard stood the Dark Angels. It was they who found Horus. It was they who conquered Luna and Mars. It was they who set out first into the bleakness of space. Their role in the Great Crusade was multifaceted. Unlike their brother legions, who often spearheaded the expansion and integration of new worlds into the Imperium's fold, the Dark Angels were frequently tasked with the most harrowing and nightmarish engagements. They faced foes that were deemed too perilous, too abhorrent for conventional warfare. These were battles fought not for glory or conquest, but for necessity, to excise cancers that threatened humanity's survival. Consider the campaigns against the Rangda, a Xenos species whose very name evokes distaste, whose records lie deep within the Library Sanctus. The Dark Angels were at the forefront of these battles. They faced the Rangdan Xenocides with a grim determination, suffering horrendous losses, yet emerging victorious where others might have faltered. Such victories were pivotal, yet they came at a great cost, not only in lives, but in the very soul of the Legion. From this campaign against the foul Xenos, the First Legion would never be the same. Their numbers dwindled through the sums of war. Throughout the Great Crusade, however, the Dark Angels continued to evolve. Their earlier sense of isolation and superiority, born from their unique origins, was both a strength and a burden. As new Primarchs were discovered and reunited with their legions, the Dark Angels watched, sometimes with a sense of pride, other times with a flicker of envy, as their brethren garnered fame and glory. We see a legion defined by its paradoxes. They were the first, yet often stood apart. They were warriors of unparalleled skill, yet their greatest battles were often hidden from the records. They sought to bring the Emperor's light to the darkest corners of the galaxy, yet in doing so, they were often consumed by shadow. Upon his arrival, Lionel Johnson was faced with a legion that, while formidable, was beset by internal divisions and a waning sense of purpose. L. Johnson, renowned for his martial prowess and strategic acumen, set about reinvigorating the Legion, grounding it in the principles he had learned from the orders on Caliban. He introduced a new command structure, assigning new masters to each of the wings he had created, drawing inspiration from the traditions of Caliban's chivalric orders. The influx of recruits from Caliban, including older warriors, was seamlessly integrated into this new structure. L. Johnson's reform was meritocratic, eschewing favoritism based on origin or tenure. Some of his former companions from the Order found themselves in positions of influence within his inner circle. However, not all were pleased with these sudden changes, particularly some veterans who viewed the dissolution of old traditions and the influx of Calibanite blood with a mix of skepticism and latent unease. The Primarch's response to this brewing discontent was characteristic of his nature: stoic indifference. Instead, he focused the Legion's energies on warfare, believing shared battles and victories would dispel lingering doubts. His approach was epitomized in the Legion's intervention at Carcassonne, a world where the Ultramarines had been beleaguered for months by a monstrous mutant uprising. Under L. Johnson's direct command, the Dark Angels arrived as unexpected saviors, showcasing the effectiveness of the Reformed Legion's martial might. L. Johnson's strategy at Carcassonne was a masterclass in warfare. Leading 1,000 of his Dreadwing veterans, he scoured the enemy with plasma fire, clearing the path for the rest of his legion to annihilate the foe. The Ultramarines, expecting some form of retribution or demand for glory in return for this aid, were met instead with the Lion's disinterest in such accolades. L. Johnson's departure from Carcassonne, leaving behind only a banner, was a clear message. His and his legion's sole commitment was to the Emperor's cause, waging war against his enemies. In these transformative years, Lionel Johnson redefined the Dark Angels. No longer just one of the Emperor's legions, they became a force singularly focused on the most challenging and dire of conflicts, far removed from the politicking and empire-building that characterized some other legions. Their pledge was to the art of war, to be the Emperor's instrument of death and destruction against all his foes. As the galaxy was torn asunder by the betrayal of Horus, the First Legion found themselves on the peripheries of this galactic conflict. Led by L. Johnson, the Dark Angels were engaged in far-flung campaigns, a strategic decision orchestrated by Horus himself to keep them from intervening in his initial schemes. When the treachery of Horus became apparent, the reaction of the Dark Angels was one of shock and disbelief, followed by a grim determination to uphold their loyalty to the Emperor. Their isolation during the early stages of the Heresy was a source of frustration and anguish for the Legion, as they yearned to join the fray and defend the Imperium they had helped to build. Despite their distance from Terra, the Dark Angels were not idle. Their first major engagement during the Heresy was the Thramas Crusade, a brutal and protracted conflict against the Night Lords. This campaign highlighted the strategic genius of Lionel Johnson and the martial might of his legion. It was a series of grueling battles marked by fierce engagements and a war of attrition that took a heavy toll on both sides. The Dark Angels emerged victorious, but at a cost, underscoring the tragic nature of this fratricidal conflict. The Dark Angels' path was one of retribution and destruction. They embarked on a series of punitive campaigns against the traitor forces, demonstrating their unrelenting drive to punish those who had betrayed the Emperor. Their actions during this period were marked by ruthless efficiency that echoed the bitterness and betrayal they felt. While the Dark Angels were engaged in distant battles amid the Heresy, a seed of betrayal was sown on their homeworld, Caliban. Luther, once a close confidant of L. Johnson, harbored a growing resentment. This resentment was exploited by the insidious powers of chaos, leading Luther and a faction of Dark Angels to fall from the Emperor's grace. The pivotal moment came in the aftermath of the Siege of Terra. The Dark Angels, returning to Caliban, were met with shocking aggression. Their own fortress monastery opened fire upon them, an unthinkable act of betrayal by those they called brothers. The ensuing conflict saw the Dark Angels pitted against their own kin in a bitter struggle that mirrored the larger galactic conflict of the Heresy. The confrontation reached its zenith with a duel between Luther and L. Johnson. It was a battle of blades and might, shattered ideals, and broken fraternity. Augmented by the dark gifts of chaos, Luther proved a formidable adversary, ultimately inflicting a grievous wound upon the Primarch. In the duel's aftermath, as L. Johnson lay stricken, the fabric of reality itself was rent asunder. The unleashed energies of the warp, manipulated by the dark gods, tore Caliban apart, scattering the traitorous Dark Angels through time and space. These renegades would come to be known as the Fallen Angels, eternally sought by their former brethren in a quest for absolution. The aftermath of this fratricidal conflict left the Dark Angels forever changed. Shrouded in secrecy, they harbored the burden of their betrayal, a secret so profound that it shaped their very identity. Their relentless pursuit of the fallen and their penance for the sins of their brothers became an enduring quest through the millennia. Luther himself, the architect of this betrayal, was found amid the ruins, his mind shattered by the enormity of his actions. His cryptic words about the fate of L. Johnson only deepened the mystery and the tragedy of the Dark Angels' tale. This betrayal would come to define the Dark Angels for millennia, their great shame, the most loyal turned betrayal, a penance they mistakenly pursue to this very day. Racked by guilt and shame, vowed to hunt down every one of the fallen, to force them to repent, or to destroy them. This secret quest, known only to the highest echelons of the chapter, became an all-consuming crusade, a relentless pursuit that often overshadowed their duties to the Imperium. In the immediate aftermath of these cataclysmic events, the Dark Angels made a pivotal decision. The truth about the schism within their legion, the treachery of Caliban, and the existence of the Fallen had to be concealed at all costs. The reasons were manifold. Not only was there the fear of being declared excommunicate traitorous, but also a profound need to seek redemption in the eyes of the Emperor. This led to the formation of the Inner Circle, a clandestine conclave comprising the Legion's highest-ranking members. This Inner Circle was tasked with overseeing the integrity of the Legion, creating a layered web of surveillance and scrutiny that extended to every battle brother. At the heart of this effort was a commitment to hunt down and bring to justice, or execute, every one of the Fallen. Shrouded in secrecy, this relentless quest has come to dominate the Dark Angels' existence, often superseding their other duties to the Imperium. The period following the Horus Heresy was marked by chaos and upheaval across the galaxy. The Dark Angels, despite their internal turmoil, rose to the occasion as stalwart defenders of humanity. They joined forces with other Astartes chapters, such as the Blood Angels and Ultramarines, to quell the remnants of the traitor legions and confront the burgeoning Xenos threats. The Dark Angels proved their loyalty and martial prowess in battle after battle. From the Cadian sector to Seption Prime, they were instrumental in thwarting the forces of chaos and mitigating the Xenos menace. Their contributions in this time of crisis were universally acclaimed, reinforcing their image as steadfast and unyielding warriors of the Emperor. Yet a disquieting revelation came to light, even as they fought to secure the Imperium. The Fallen, thought to have been annihilated in the warp storm that consumed Caliban, had in fact survived. Under his influence, these warriors, loyal at heart, were led to believe they were upholding the true ideals of the Dark Angels and the Imperium. When Caliban was torn asunder, these Fallen were scattered across the galaxy, not only in space, but also in time. This dispersal further complicated their plight. Many found themselves in a galaxy vastly different from the one they knew, a galaxy where their actions on Caliban were already condemned and their fates seemingly sealed. Haunted by their past and pursued relentlessly by their former brethren, these fallen angels now find themselves in a perpetual game of cat and mouse. To the Dark Angels, they are traitors who must repent or be destroyed. Yet from another perspective, these fallen are tragic figures, warriors who once fought for the Emperor, now hunted for actions born from deception. The plight of these fallen angels raises profound questions about loyalty and truth within the Imperium. They are a reminder of how loyalty can be manipulated, how truth can be twisted, and how the line between hero and traitor can blur in the complexities of our Imperium. The Dark Angels organization is unique, deeply rooted in the traditions laid down by L. Johnson and influenced by the knightly orders of their original homeworld, Caliban. Unlike many of their brother chapters, the Dark Angels maintain a complex and highly secretive internal structure. At the highest level, the chapter is led by the Supreme Grand Master, a figure of immense authority and responsibility. He oversees the entire chapter and its secretive mission to hunt down and either redeem or destroy the Fallen. Beneath the Supreme Grand Master are the Inner Circle and the Chapter Council, consisting of senior members of the chapter. These are the keepers of the chapter's darkest secrets and are involved in the most critical decisions, especially those concerning the Fallen. The chapter is divided into companies, each led by a company master. These companies are similar in structure to other Space Marine chapters, with battle companies comprising tactical, assault and devastator squads, supported by veteran and scout squads. However, the Dark Angels diverge from their brethren with the existence of the Deathwing and the Raven Wing. The Deathwing, the chapter's first company, consists entirely of Terminator armored veterans, renowned for their resolve and pursuit of the chapter's enemies. The Raven Wing, forming the second company, are the fast attack specialists, masters of rapid strike tactics, employing bikes and speeders to outmaneuver and hunt down their foes. Each of these companies is a self-contained force, capable of prosecuting the Emperor's will independently or as part of a larger battle group. This allows the Dark Angels to be highly flexible and responsive to our Imperium's myriad threats. Their early formation saw them as a diverse melting pot of warriors from various Terran cultures. This diversity, combined with the guidance of their Primarch, instilled a versatility in combat that became a hallmark of the Legion. This versatility allowed them to adapt to any theater of war, confronting a myriad of threats without the need for specialized detachments. In terms of practice, the Dark Angels display a remarkable ability to switch roles and tactics on the battlefield with a fluidity unmatched by other chapters. A squad accustomed to shock assault can seamlessly transition to a defensive stance, while a unit skilled in ranged warfare can adapt to close-quarters combat when required. This versatility is further enhanced by their arsenal, which includes a wealth of relic weaponry and equipment, allowing them to tailor their armaments to the needs of the mission. Organizationally, they have retained remnants of their original structure from the days of the Great Crusade in the form of the hexagrammaton, or the 6 wings. These wings, including the infamous Death Wing and Raven Wing, are not mere specialist formations, but are integrated into the chapter's overall strategy, providing a range of tactical options that can be employed as the situation demands. This structure, combined with their secretive nature and the complex hierarchy of their inner circle, allows the Dark Angels to operate with a level of strategic flexibility that is rare among the Adeptus Astartes. This very ability to conduct war without rigid specialism makes the Dark Angels a formidable force. They are not hammers seeking a nail, but finely tuned instruments capable of playing a wide array of tunes. Their adaptability is a testament to their origins as the First Legion, a heritage they carry with pride and a sense of duty that transcends the millennia. The Deathwing is a paragon of might and mystery in their esteemed echelons. As the elite First Company, these guardians of the chapter's most enigmatic secrets are not just warriors, they embody the Dark Angel's legacy. Each member of the Deathwing is a veteran, sheathed in the revered tactical dreadnought armor. This hallowed battle gear is more than mere protection. It symbolizes their elite stature and role as keepers of secrets buried deep within the rock's ancient halls. The honor of being initiated into the Deathwing signifies a Dark Angel's ascension into the innermost circles of the chapter. At this critical juncture, a brother first confronts the stark truth of Luther's betrayal. This revelation reshapes their understanding of service and duty, furthering their actions and purpose. In the theater of war, the Deathwing emerges as an unstoppable force, capable of being teleported directly into the heart of conflict. Clad in bone-white armor, they are warriors in formidable gear and symbols of dread and resolution. The journey to becoming a Deathwing member is paved with rigorous and solemn initiation rites. Those who triumph in these trials embody martial prowess and an unforgettable quest for redemption. With each revelation of their chapter's past, their resolve only deepens, fueling their relentless drive to fulfill their sacred mission. Yet, even within the Deathwing's ranks, deeper strata of initiation and knowledge exist. The Deathwing Knights, an innermost cadre, delve further into the chapter's history, bearing the weight of their legacy with a solemn duty. The Deathwing's significance reverberates beyond the Dark Angels chapter. It echoes through the first companies of the Unforgiven, the successors of the original First Legion. Each chapter shares the same commitment to hunting down the fallen, irrespective of the sacrifice required. The Raven Wing, the Dark Angels' second company, clad in their distinctive black power armor, stand in stark contrast to their green-clad brothers, embodying a role that surpasses conventional warfare. Specializing in rapid hit-and-run tactics, The Ravenwing employs an arsenal of fast attack vehicles, including Space Marine bikes and land speeders. The Ravenwing are hunters, and their quarry is the elusive Fallen. This pursuit of the Fallen is a sacred duty for the Ravenwing, conducted under a veil of utmost secrecy. Only the most loyal and skilled warriors are initiated into the truth behind these hunts. The task of the Ravenwing is relentless and consuming. Across the galaxy, they follow the faintest whispers and leads, their vigilance unwavering in the search for any trace of the Fallen. Their operations are marked by surgical precision. They strike swiftly and fiercely, often leaving their foes reeling in bewilderment and chaos from the suddenness and ferocity of their assault. Among their ranks are the elite of the elite, the Ravenwing Black Knights. These are veterans seasoned by countless battles, each a master of the art of war. Mounted upon the enhanced Mark IV Raven Pattern Space Marine assault bikes, these knights wield deadly plasma talons and carry the iconic Corvus hammers, symbols of their knightly heritage from Caliban. The Dark Angels were reorganized into a chapter as per the dictates of the Codex Astartes, formulated by Guilliman. However, unlike many of their brethren chapters, the Dark Angels and their successors have maintained a level of unique coordination and unity among the Astartes. This unity is primarily driven by their shared purpose, to hunt down and either redeem or destroy the Fallen. This singular objective has bound the Unforgiven chapters together in a way that transcends typical chapter alliances or temporary coalitions formed for specific campaigns. The Inner Circle governs the Dark Angels and coordinates the actions of the Unforgiven chapters. The existence of such a centralized command structure, transcending individual chapter autonomy, is a unique phenomenon among these post-Heresy chapters. Each Unforgiven chapter, while ostensibly independent, follows the Dark Angels' organizational structure closely. They have versions of the elite Deathwing and Ravenwing formations and participate in joint operations directed by the Inner Circle. Meetings of the Grand Masters of these chapters are held in secrecy, often within the Rock, the Dark Angels' fortress monastery, where strategies are formed and information about the Fallen is shared and acted upon. This coordination and shared purpose level is highly unusual among the Adeptus Astartes. In practice, the Unforgiven operate with a unity and singular purpose more akin to the pre-Heresy legions than to the post-Heresy chapters. While they adhere to the Codex Astartes in the organization of individual chapters, their joint operations, shared intelligence, and unified command structure via the Inner Circle effectively recreate a legion's strategic and operational capabilities. Such a structure within the Unforgiven raises many questions about loyalty, autonomy, and the interpretation of Guilliman's Codex Astartes. The balancing act between maintaining the guise of Codex compliance and operating as a unified force poses unique challenges and advantages for the Unforgiven. The Dark Angels and their successors present a unique case study in the Adeptus Astartes organization. Their ability to operate cohesively across chapter lines, driven by a shared mission, sets them apart in the current era of the Imperium. As historians, we must continue to observe how this unique organizational structure impacts their role in the galaxy, especially in these times of great upheaval. Unlike many Space Marine chapters, the Dark Angels do not recruit from a single homeworld. Instead, they draw their aspirants from myriad planets across the galaxy. This diverse approach to recruitment is not a necessity born from the loss of their homeworld Caliban, but a strategic choice that reflects the Dark Angels' idea of the importance of adaptability and resilience. These recruitment worlds, often primitive or feral, are bound to the Dark Angels through oaths of protection. In return, these planets offer their strongest and most promising juveniles for consideration by the chapter. The Dark Angels' representatives, shrouded in the same secrecy that envelops their chapter, visit each of these worlds approximately once in a human lifetime to select potential recruits. The process of selection is rigorous and unforgiving. The chosen few are the strongest, the most resilient, and those with the potential for greatness. Upon being taken into the chapter, these aspirants leave their past lives behind, their origins becoming immaterial as they begin their arduous journey to become Space Marines. An aspirant's story begins in one of the many feudal worlds from which the Dark Angels recruit. Here, young men, barely past their childhood, are gathered in the shadow of the rock. It is a time-honored tradition where the strongest, bravest, and most resilient are chosen. But physical strength alone is not enough. The aspirants must also possess an unbreakable spirit and will. The journey of an aspirant starts with trials designed to test their limits. These are not mere tests of combat, but trials of fear, pain, and endurance. The aspirants are pushed to the brink of human capacity, not just to test their physical abilities, but to strip away the veneer of their character, revealing the true nature of their souls. In this raw and unguarded state, it is here that the chaplains and apothecaries of the Dark Angels assess the suitability of each aspirant. Let us consider the tale of one such aspirant born into a warrior clan. Their journey began when the Dark Angels descended upon his world. He was a fierce combatant, standing out even among the strongest of his peers, but not his skill at arms that marked him. His resolve and his capacity to endure hardships caught the eye of the interrogator chaplains. Along with other selected aspirants, they are subjected to grueling trials. They fought against each other and their own fears and limitations. They were tested for genetic compatibility, and their bodies were probed and analyzed by the apothecary's arcane machinery, ensuring they were suitable vessels for the gene seed of L. Johnson. Surviving these trials was only the beginning. They are then taken aboard the Rock, where they are subjected to the implantation process. This process, involving the insertion of the gene seed and various organs unique to a Space Marine, is a harrowing experience, often conducted without anesthetic. It is a transformation that pushes the aspirant to the brink of death, only to be reborn as something more than human. Throughout this ordeal, their will is tested. Indoctrinated into the chapter's culture, taught the values of loyalty, secrecy, and the eternal quest to hunt. With each step, they shed more of their former selves, embodying the chapter's ideals. Like all Space Marine chapters, the gene seed of the Dark Angels, developed from the genetic template of a Primarch, endows Space Marines with superhuman abilities, resilience, and longevity. But what makes the gene seed of the Dark Angels particularly intriguing is its remarkable stability. A stable gene seed has a low mutation rate and a high compatibility with a wide range of human genetic structures. This stability is crucial for the continued survival and effectiveness of a Space Marine chapter. In the Dark Angels' case, their gene seed shows minimal deviation from its original form as created by the Emperor. This has several implications for the chapter. One of the primary factors contributing to this stability is believed to be the genetic makeup of L. Johnson himself. Known for his strategic insight and stoic nature, he has passed on a gene seed that is less susceptible to the corrupting influences of the warp and the rigors of prolonged warfare. This has resulted in fewer genetic malfunctions or aberrations within the Dark Angels and the Unforgiven. Some genomagi have posited that perhaps the Dark Angel genoseed's unique trait is considerable warp resistance. The Dark Angels can thus replenish their ranks with less concern for the genetic idiosyncrasies that plague some other chapters. It also means that the traits and abilities imparted by the gene seed, such as enhanced strength, resilience, and the functioning of the implanted organs, remain consistent over generations. Furthermore, this stability has a profound psychological effect. The Dark Angels, known for their secrecy and relentless pursuit of their fallen brethren, rely heavily on their members' unswerving loyalty and mental fortitude. A stable gene seed ensures psychological uniformity and resistance to external corruptions. which is essential given the nature of their eternal quest. However, this stability should not be mistaken for immunity. Like all Space Marines, the Dark Angels are still vulnerable to the temptations of chaos and the rigors of war. Their gene seed's purity demands constant vigilance and stringent recruitment and training processes to maintain its integrity. Their combat doctrine, honed over millennia, reflects their Primarch's strategic genius. It is characterized by relentless assault, discipline, and a penchant for trickery. The chapter's tactics are about winning battles and achieving precise objectives. At the heart of their strategy lies the concept of overwhelming force, applied at the decisive point of engagement. The Dark Angels do not believe in half measures. When they strike, they do so with the full might of their formidable arsenal, ensuring that the enemy is not merely defeated, but utterly crushed. This philosophy is evident in their preference for heavy weaponry and armored units capable of delivering devastating firepower. However, this brute force is always applied with a keen strategic mind. They are masters of combined arms warfare, seamlessly integrating different elements of their chapter, from the stoic infantry of the Green Wing to the swift and deadly assaults of the Raven Wing and the indomitable Terminators of the Death Wing. Each wing plays a distinct role, creating a layered approach to combat that can adapt to any threat. The Raven Wing, for instance, serves as the chapter's rapid response force. Mounted on bikes and speeders, they are the eyes and ears of the chapter, excelling in reconnaissance and lightning-fast hit-and-run attacks. Their primary objective is often to track and hunt the fallen. Still, in the theater of war, they disrupt enemy lines, sow confusion, and identify critical targets for elimination. Once the Raven Wing has softened the enemy and identified critical targets, the Death Wing enters the fray. Clad in their iconic bone-white Terminator armor, these veterans are the hammer to the Raven Wing's scalpel. Teleporting directly into the heart of the battle, the Death Wing delivers a killing blow to the most formidable adversaries, demonstrating the Dark Angels' prowess in shock assault tactics. But one must pay attention to the Gren Wing, the backbone of the chapter. These battle brothers, though less specialized than their counterparts in the Raven Wing and Death Wing, are highly versatile and capable of executing a wide range of battlefield roles with exceptional skill. Whether holding the line in defense, conducting precise ranged attacks, or engaging in brutal close-quarters combat, the Gren Wing demonstrates the Dark Angels' adaptability and tactical acumen. Above all, the Dark Angels' doctrine is marked by their secretive nature. They are a chapter with many layers. Not all strategies are laid bare for even their members to see. This secrecy often extends to their allies, leading to strained relationships with other Imperial forces. But make no mistake, every action they take, every strategy they employ, serves their ultimate goal of redemption, the capture and repentance of the fallen. At the heart of the Dark Angels' culture lies a profound sense of duty and honor, intertwined with a deep-rooted sense of guilt and shame stemming from the betrayal of Caliban. This dichotomy defines much of their character, stoic and stubborn, yet forever haunted by the shadows of their past. The Dark Angels are warriors without peers, but their battle is twofold, against the Imperium's enemies and their forebears' sins. The chapter's traditions and rituals are as ancient as they are secretive. From the Feast of Malediction to the Rite of Sins Renounced, each ceremony serves as a sad reminder of their relentless quest for redemption. These rituals, often led by their stoic chaplains, are not just formalities, but the very fabric of their identity. Initiation into these rituals will often also dictate the secrets shared with the Marine. The more pure, trustworthy, and longer they serve, the more these rituals open them up to the inner workings and achelions of the Dark Angels' web of secrets. Their monastic lifestyle is another distinctive trait. They devote considerable time to worship, reflection, and studying their history. This reflective nature often sets them apart from other chapters, giving rise to a perception of aloofness or detachment. However, this introspection is a crucible for their resolve and unyielding determination in battle. Deeply ingrained with the Dark Angels is the enigmatic Watchers in the Dark, a diminutive robed species inhabiting the rock. Shrouded in mystery, these beings were native to the Dark Angels' destroyed homeworld of Caliban. Their origins, nature, and intentions remain concealed mainly, even to the Dark Angels. The Dark Angels have formed an unspoken alliance with these mysterious entities. This acceptance of Xenos' assistance is highly unorthodox within the Imperium, where distrust of alien life forms is deeply ingrained. The Watchers do not engage directly in combat. Instead, they serve in supportive roles, often seen carrying relics and weapons of significant importance. For a chapter like the Dark Angels, whose existence is cloaked in secrecy and guilt, trusting an alien species is paradoxical. However, this trust is born out of necessity and a shared enmity towards the forces of chaos. The Watchers' resistance to the warp and their apparent alignment against chaos make them invaluable allies in the eyes of the Dark Angels. It's plausible to assume that this relationship is mutually beneficial. With their mysterious goals, the Watchers find a powerful force in the material realm in the Dark Angels. Meanwhile, the Dark Angels utilize the unique abilities of the Watchers to further their secretive objectives, particularly in their eternal hunt. There seems to be a silent understanding between the Dark Angels and the Watchers, a bond forged based on shared secrets and a common purpose. This understanding has allowed the Watchers to be integrated into the chapter's life and operations. The root of their secretive nature lies in the grievous events that transpired during the closing days of the Horus Heresy. When the Dark Angels returned to their homeworld, they found it in rebellion, or so many confusedly thought, led by Luther, once the closest confidant of their Primarch. This betrayal and the subsequent destruction of Caliban left an indelible stain upon the honor of the Dark Angels. Luther's followers, who would come to be known as the Fallen, were scattered across time and space by the chaotic energies unleashed during the planet's destruction. The Dark Angels believe their chapter's honor is irrevocably tainted until all of the Fallen is captured and made to repent. This eternal quest is their most closely guarded secret, known only to those within the inner circle of the chapter. This secret shapes every aspect of the Dark Angels' existence. From the initiation rites of the Deathwing and Ravenwing to the covert operations conducted across the galaxy, every action is directed towards the capture of the Fallen and the redemption of their chapter. The fear that their true history might be revealed to the broader Imperium, and the possible repercussions of such a revelation, drives the Dark Angels to extreme lengths to maintain their secrecy. This obsessive pursuit has led to instances where the Dark Angels have seemingly acted against our interests, abandoning crucial battles or eliminating witnesses to their covert operations. To outsiders, these actions can seem inexplicable, even treacherous. But to the Dark Angels, they are necessary sacrifices on the altar of redemption. Furthermore, their secretive nature has fostered a culture of paranoia and mistrust within the chapter itself. The higher one ascends in their ranks, the more one learns of the truth, with the Supreme Grand Master being privy to the deepest secrets. This stratification of knowledge creates an environment where even battle brothers can only be partially sure of each other's intentions or loyalties. It is important to note that the Dark Angels' gene seed is not responsible for their secretive demeanor. Like all Space Marine chapters, the gene seed was designed to enhance physical and mental capabilities, not dictate behavior or cultural practices. Their secrecy and paranoia are not born of gene seed failure, but are the result of a deeply ingrained sense of shame and the enduring legacy of L. Johnson. This complex web of guilt, duty, and honor defines them. The Inquisition, ever watchful for the slightest hint of betrayal or deviation within the Imperium's ranks, is not ignorant of the peculiarities surrounding the Dark Angels. It is an open secret that the Dark Angels and their successors operate in a manner that closely resembles the functioning of a legion. This flirts dangerously with contravention of the Codex Astartes, which was implemented to prevent any single Astartes force from wielding too much power. The Inquisition is acutely aware of these transgressions. They observe the Unforgiven's clandestine summits, their coordinated strategies, and their shared relentless hunt for the fallen angels. While not overtly heretical, the Dark Angels' actions dance along the periphery of what the Inquisition might deem acceptable. So why does the Inquisition tolerate such behavior from the Dark Angels? The answer lies in a complex web of realpolitik, pragmatism, and, perhaps most importantly, results. Despite their secretive ways, the Dark Angels are among the most steadfast defenders of the Imperium. Their martial prowess, unwavering loyalty to the Emperor, and successes on the battlefield against the enemies of mankind are beyond reproach. The Dark Angels have repeatedly proven to be bulwarks against the darkness that threatens to engulf the Imperium. The Inquisition, for all its authority and power, is not blind to the value of such allies. To move openly against the Dark Angels would be to risk fracturing a pillar of imperial strength, an act that could have dire consequences in these times of relentless war. Moreover, the Dark Angels' transgressions are, at their core, driven not by ambition or a desire for power, but by a deeply ingrained sense of guilt and a desperate quest for redemption. A quest that, ironically, aligns with the Inquisition's own goal of protecting the Imperium from internal and external threats. Thus, we find ourselves in a situation where the Inquisition, ever the guardian against deviation, chooses a path of cautious observation over confrontation. It is a tacit acknowledgement that the Dark Angels, though they walk a shadowed path, do so in the service of the Emperor. The Inquisition becomes one of the watchful guardians, ensuring that the Dark Angels' secretive nature does not lead them astray from the Emperor's light. Of course, the impact of El Johnson's reappearance could be multifaceted. Foremost, it could cause a seismic shift in the chapter's psyche. The Dark Angels have been burdened with a collective guilt over the fallen for generations. Their relentless, covert pursuit of these fallen has defined the chapter's actions and ethos. El Johnson's return could potentially absolve them of this deep-seated shame, fundamentally altering their raison d'être. However, the rumored recruitment of the fallen by El Johnson adds a layer of complexity to this scenario. Should the Primarch indeed be seeking the allegiance of those he once fought against? How would the Dark Angels reconcile their centuries-long hunt for the fallen with their Primarch's apparent willingness to forgive and incorporate these same individuals? This would challenge the core of the chapter's beliefs and could lead to internal conflict, with some unable to accept this new direction. Furthermore, the return of a Primarch is a momentous event for the Imperium at large, particularly in these times of heightened threats, both from within and beyond its borders. El Johnson's strategic insight and formidable martial prowess would be invaluable assets. Fragmented reports from Imperial Nihilus already state that the Lion has secured an area of space from chaos and is continuing to push this protectorate. Regarding military and political ramifications, El Johnson's return could also lead to a realignment of power within the Imperium. His legendary status and the Dark Angels' might could shift the balance of power among the Space Marine chapters and the High Lords of Terror. His approach to the Imperium's current crises, his relationship with the Ecclesiarchy, and his stance on the Codex Astartes would be closely scrutinized, as will his relationship with Guilliman. It raises profound questions. What does redemption truly mean for the Dark Angels? Can those who have fallen so far be welcomed back, and under what circumstances? Does the Primarch's decision supersede the chapter's long-held convictions? The possibility of the Dark Angels accepting the fallen hinges on several factors. The first is the nature of the Primarch's decision. Is this a strategic move, a broader plan of redemption, or something else? Understanding his motivations would be key in determining the chapter's response. Furthermore, the nature of the Fallen's repentance or redemption plays a crucial role. If they have somehow atoned for their betrayal in the eyes of L. Johnson, would that be sufficient for the rest of the chapter? Or would they require more tangible proof of loyalty and penance? Additionally, this development could create a schism within the chapter. Some might view the acceptance of the Fallen as a betrayal of everything they have fought for, potentially leading to internal conflict or even a breakaway faction. In the broader context of the Imperium, this shift could alter the Dark Angels' standing with other Space Marine chapters and Imperial institutions. The Inquisition, always wary of the Dark Angels' secretive nature, might view this development with suspicion, potentially leading to strained relations or outright conflict. As we have seen, the Dark Angels are a chapter of paradoxes. They are stoic yet secretive, loyal yet isolated. Their organization, deeply rooted in the traditions of Caliban and the legacy of Lion L. Johnson, deviates significantly from the standard Codex Astartes, yet adheres to its spirit in many ways. Their unique structure, including the Inner Circle, the Death Wing, and the Raven Wing, is a testament to their complex heritage and the multifaceted nature of their ongoing struggle. Furthermore, their relationship with their successor chapters is equally intriguing. Operating with a level of coordination and singular purpose reminiscent of the ancient legions, they starkly contrast with the more independent and isolated nature of other Adeptus Astartes chapters. This unity, driven by a shared secret burden, raises questions about their place within the broader context of the Imperium and the ongoing struggle against the forces of chaos and other threats. As we consider the future of the Dark Angels, it is clear that they will continue to be shaped by the dualities that define them. Their quest for redemption, adherence to ancient traditions, and secretive nature will undoubtedly continue to drive their actions in the galaxy. As historians and scholars, we must continue to observe, document, and seek an understanding of this enigmatic chapter. For in their story lies a deeper understanding of the Imperium itself, its past, and its potential future. In closing, I thank you all for your keen interest and insightful contributions throughout these lectures. The story of the Dark Angels is far from complete, and as the galaxy continues to evolve, so too will the saga of the First Legion. Let us watch with keen eyes and open minds as their story unfolds. Thank you again for joining me in exploring one of the Imperium's most storied and enigmatic chapters. May your quest for knowledge always illuminate the shadows.